Well, we move on now to our next session, which I'll be moderating this time, under the title of 4IR for a More Resilient Manufacturing Sector. Well, the past few months has forced a reduction in physical interaction, where automation and digitalization have become vital for businesses to ensure sustainability. The recent pandemic has also exposed the true vulnerability of global supply chains to unexpected shocks, and attention continues to be placed on the need for global businesses to accelerate their digital transformation and adopt smarter and more risk-adjusted business models. Well, to tell us more about 4IR when it comes to a more resilient manufacturing sector, it's a great honour to welcome our panellists. It's a true privilege to have join us today His Excellency Marcos Pontes, the Minister of State for Science, Technology and Innovations for Brazil. His Excellency has the mission of managing the strategic role of science, technology and innovation for the development of the country, promoting innovation and public policies for the production of knowledge and wealth, as well as quality of life. His Excellency is also an astronaut and the only Brazilian to ever go into space, and was a member of NASA's 1998 class of astronauts, where he carried out the Centennial mission in 2006, working 10 days at the International Space Station as a missions specialist. Today, he strives to transform scientific knowledge into wealth for the country and to boost technological development in Brazil. A very warm welcome to His Excellency Marcos Pontes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Our next guest is the Honourable Mattia Fantinati, who is currently serving as a member of the House of Representatives within the Italian Parliament. Last year, he was appointed Special Advisor to the Minister of Technological Innovation and Digitalisation. His main areas of interest are digital transformation in government and innovation management in public and private organisations. As a Member of Parliament, Mattia sits on the Permanent Committee for Industry, Trade, Research and Development, Innovation and Tourism of the Italian House of Representatives. A very warm welcome to the Honourable Mattia Fantinati.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your invitation. Thank you. Very glad to be here.
Dr. Stephen Walker is our next panellist. He is the Vice President and Chief Technology Officer of the Lockheed Martin Corporation, where he's responsible for the company's technology strategy, global research, mission development, and emerging operations technologies. Under his direction, the company is shaping the next era of operational capability and innovation. As the primary liaison to the US and international science and technology community, Dr. Stephen manages strategic partnerships with governments, industry and academia to ensure the deployment of cutting-edge technologies. A very warm welcome to Dr. Stephen Walker.
Thank you, Laura, for having me.
Our next panellist is Mr. Anders Fredholm, who's the Vice President and Global Business Development Leader for Industrial Products and Chemicals and Petroleum Industries at IBM. Anders, in his current role, leads the development of business and relations for IBM's worldwide client base in manufacturing and automation, metals, mining, engineering, construction, and forest and paper industries. A prime focus for him is on operations across value chains, engineering products and services, as well as developing new ways to market. A very warm welcome to Anders Fredholm.
Thanks for the invitation. Great to be here.
And our final panellist today is Mr. TV Narendran, who is the President-Designate, CII, and CEO and Managing Director of Tata Steel Limited, where he's overseen a number of large acquisitions and expansion for the company. He has over 30 years of experience in the mining and metals industry and is currently on the board of Tata Steel Limited. He's also the chairman of Tata Steel Europe and is a member of the board of the World Steel Association and is a member of its executive committee. He's also the vice president of the Indian Institute of Metals. A very warm welcome to Mr. TV Narendran.
Thank you, Laura.
Well, a really fantastic lineup we have here for this session, and we really appreciate your time and being with us here at the Virtual Summit. Thank you so much once again for joining us. Well, let's start off with some of the main challenges currently facing this sector at present. I'd actually like to start off with His Excellency Marcos Pontes, Considering your development of the public sector through a number of policies, programs and projects, of course, and with manufacturing being a vital thread within the country's economic landscape, tell us about some of the challenges that you've been witnessing over in Brazil within the sector, especially during such an uncertain time.
Thank you very much for your question. And here in Brazil, we're taking several different approaches to solve all the problems that we have related with this deployment in Brazil. First of all, we have to think that this is a system, and every time we think about deployment of a new program, for example, big program like this, we have three factors to consider. One is the infrastructure, second one is the environment, and the third one is the human side of this equation. And in this ministry, if you see, we have science, which is related, especially with knowledge necessary for the systems, for the people to work, and actually it helps also if you think about the human side of this equation, also help with the social environment. So they have the science in this place. Also, we have the technology. So this is pretty much related with the infrastructure needed, but also other systems that can help to perform in this other two areas. And also we have innovations, which is related with all the three factors. And you have to consider in terms of the difficulties here in Brazil, that Brazil is a huge country. It's a kind of continental size country. And so we have social differences. So it's not like a small country, like homogeneous and everything is pretty much the same in all the countries. No, here's a huge country, and this brings several difficulties in this. First of all, funding is one of the other problems for this, and we have different governments, state governments in each part of the country. So you have this coordination is another question here. Also, you have to consider the preparation of the professional skills for the workforce. So this is another problem, that because of the social differences in the country, is not the same how we approach the problem in each of the regions that we have. So each factor brings some kind of challenge for us here. And they're mostly connected with the micro, small, and medium-sized companies. And so putting all this together, we are working in partnership, so the federal level and the local government, and the private sector. So first of all, we can identify all the challenges in each region and each situation that they face in different regions. And also working all this as a system with different ministries working together. So education, infrastructure, us here, science, technology, innovations, our communications, another problem. It's a huge country. We have to bring connectivity to all this size. And so there are several different challenges, and we are taking different approaches here. And that's pretty much connected with the size of the country and still the social differences that we have in different regions of the country.
As you said, it's probably worth having a clear sort of roadmap as well, isn't it? But it's going to be very interesting to see which specific industries as well face quite a difficult transition from now as well, which I'd like to ask you a little later on, if I may. But moving over to the Honourable Mattia Fantinati, tell us what's happening over in Italy. Are you facing the same types of challenges when it comes to the manufacturing sector?
Thank you very much for your question, because Italy has got quite the same problem of Brazil, because we have a lot of small and medium enterprise. So we consider that kind of enterprise with they difficultly have an access to the funds, and for them is very difficult to make critical mass in order to spend a lot of money in research. That's because we are paving the way to help all the company to create a critical mass and make some partnership, a private and public partnership. So the industry from one side and the university and the center of research to the other side to have the same goal and the same target. I think this is one of the aspects of the Italy. Now, if you want to step back from the Italian aspect, I would like to have a better overview worldwide that even in the sort of revolution, industrial revolution, and that it means a technological revolution, because most developed economies have adopted different approach that reflects their own political, economic, cultural, and social system. In the US and in China, large companies are significantly investing in new technology, and they are exploiting large amounts of data. In this case, Europe and Italy as well lag behind in private investment. That's because for us, and when I say us, I mean for Europe, but for Italy as well, because please remember that Italy is the second industry in the EU. For us is a fundamental aspect to invest in all the sector that can improve and scale up our technological scale. I mean, in manufacturing, healthcare, transport, and space technologies as well. That's why we are investing a lot. And this is the first aspect. Then I would like to conclude describing the second aspect. And the second aspect is about the development scale. We have to develop the best skill of our employees, but not only the digital skill. When I say skill, I mean the skill even that are complementary, that cannot replace by any other machine. I mean critical thinking, creativity, management. And secondly, we have to create like a state, a social protection for the people whose their job will be replaced by the machine. And so and the third, and I want to conclude, we are trying more specialistic in order to create a development skill in order to reduce the digital gap. Thank you.
Well, moving over to Dr. Stephen from, of course, Lockheed Martin, as a global company and one of the biggest defense companies in the world. Presumably, you've got resilient systems in place already, and when it comes to supply chain and, of course, to digital transformation, is there anything? What sort of challenges have you found or have you seen sort of globally on a global scale? And maybe sort of what are the things that we can learn from what you already have in place as well?
Well, thank you, Laura. I think our biggest challenge in the last 6 months has been this pandemic, in terms of how we're dealing with that and how we're trying to be more resilient in the midst of that. Our leadership made it very clear early on that there were 3 priorities: take care of our people first, especially those frontline manufacturing workers on the floor. Keep our operations moving. What we're building is largely for the national security of the United States and our allies and partners. And so that was a very important aspect of this, is keep doing what we're doing. We've got to produce product like the F-35 and get them off the floor. The third was really, prepare for the future. And so we've been trying to do that for the last 6 months in the midst of this pandemic. Taking care of our people was really important, and so we actually converted some of our manufacturing capability to producing protective gowns and face shields. So about 80,000 gowns were produced within Lockheed Martin manufacturing facilities, and about 40,000 face shields. Those were distributed to our employees, especially the employees on the front line, and others. Fortunately, you mentioned resilience. Fortunately, we are a global company. We have pretty good ways that we can communicate already virtually, and so many of our employees are spread all over the world. and virtual tools are almost second nature. And so when the pandemic hit, we were well set up and well situated to telework largely. Now that doesn't help. You still need people in the factory making the products. And so a large part of our workforce was able to work from home and still is. But again, taking care of the frontline workers was important. And so we spaced the workers out in the factory as well as we could. And that has helped also protect our workers from disease. I think the supply chain you mentioned is an important aspect of this. We're a system integrator. We are very dependent on our supply chain. And so actually for the last 6 months, the US government has really, really helped companies like Lockheed Martin by getting us additional cash, increasing the cash flow to us so that we could pass it along to our supply chain. And so just in the month of July, Lockheed Martin was able to pass about $750 million to our supply chain to keep that chain strong and working and employed. And that has made a huge difference. But if it weren't for our customer, the U.S. government, and helping us do that, that would be a problem. But we feel pretty good about where that is. And then finally, the future. We, in the midst of this pandemic, the last 6 months, we've hired over 10,000 people at Lockheed Martin. So you can't just go backwards during these times. You've got to prepare for the future. And so those are some things we're doing to kind of try and be more resilient and get through this thing.
Really interesting. It's very as important, as you said, to have like a support system in place, especially when it comes to funding and things. We move over to Anders Fredholm. Tell us about some of the challenges that you've been seeing as well. And is the future been at the forefront of your strategy off the back of the pandemic then?
Thank you. I would say that the COVID-19 has revealed the fragility of a very global economy already, right? By rapidly shifting or sometimes deteriorating the demand and disrupting the supply chain, as Steve talked about, right? This comes at a time when manufacturers, I would say, were already dealing with a demographic shift in talents and skills, back to the point of recruitment, right? The demand for a greater personalization of products and the need for an increased service content in the products as such, right? And also a demand for interacting more across the ecosystems, right? So specifically, we've seen this with our clients where, for example, a lot of work or manual work is not prepared to be automated today or be run remotely in the sense it is set up today, right? Because it doesn't cover the workflows that would be in place to be able to do that. I would say also the industrial activities in remote areas like mining, for example, has suffered since staffing cannot be fulfilled, since the employees cannot get to the job, etc. This has also, of course, affected the transportations and hence the global supply chains, right? Another point I would like to make is the plans for getting back to work. There are tremendous challenges to do this in a safe and controlled way, to manage distance, tracking personal interactions and health conditions, etc. So I also think, on the other hand, some industries have had some upside in the demand when it comes to paper goods, for example, plastic makers, when it comes to packaging, food containers, medical equipment makers, for example, has had, I think, a higher demand, electronics makers, etc. And what we at IBM today are engaged in a lot with our clients now, and has been since we started to create the first response plans with our client, is simply to get out of the pandemic first situation by responding to what's happening simply, right? And then more to resolve the issues of what I've been talking about, and then looking in 3 to 6 months ahead to see what can then be the reinvention of the situation, because there will be a new normal out of this. And I think we will talk later on a bit around which technologies, etc., that can support that reinvention coming in the future. So I think that is what we're dealing with today, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, do you feel that the pandemic has almost sort of helped accelerate a transition towards the inevitable for IR in the long term as well. Do you think that's...
Yes, I definitely do that. Yes, correct. Yeah, we see a greater demand for technology that can simply tie the supply chains to better together, that can improve the agility, and then of course we spoke about the making the staff safe and secure at work, and the solutions that can simply support that going forward, right? So the answer is definitely yes, in many ways, yes.
Okay, so we move on now to Mr. TV Narendran. Tell us about some of the challenges that you've witnessed within the manufacturing sector, and also what's been happening within the steel industry as well when it comes to transitioning towards digitalization as well.
It's been a pretty challenging few years for the manufacturing industry globally. I think it started with the issues on trade and the geopolitical issues, which kind of made it difficult to operate global supply chains. And to add to that, we had the pandemic. So we've had multiple challenges. And I think countries have started looking inward. Countries have started looking at trade more from a bilateral point of view than from a multilateral point of view. So all this has led to the increase in risks that we have to deal with as manufacturing. In addition, of course, macroeconomic growth has been a bit slow, and that has put pressure as well on profitability and bottom lines. So these are some of the challenges the manufacturing industry has been dealing with. In the middle of all that, we've also had issues related to climate change, the carbon footprint. We've had issues related to the fact that everyone is transitioning from the physical to the digital world. So all this calls for resources, both in terms of time and money. And as manufacturing and as steel industry as well, we've been investing a lot of effort in that. From a Tata Steel point of view, we've been through this journey for the last 3-4 years. We've been investing huge amounts of money making this transition. I think it's also important for manufacturing companies, for instance, to invest in connectivity, because we operate sometimes in fairly remote locations. So the challenge is different from an urban-centric services industry, which may be transitioning to the digital world. So improving the connectivity, more sensorization so that you capture a lot of information that you generate on a daily basis, building the capability and the infrastructure to analyze that information, get the insights and work on it. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that's on our table just now.
We move back to Your Excellency Marcus Pontes. As I mentioned earlier, we were going to talk about some of the specific industries that you feel face more of a complicated transition to digitalization. What have you noticed, and which specific industries, and how are you sort of tackling this as well? Is there anything that you're implementing at government level?
Yes, well, here in Brazil, we have this kind of peculiar situation because it's not completely related with the type of industry, but the location of the industry and the size of the industry. Well, mostly, the micro, small, and medium-sized companies they have been in a difficult situation, a complicated situation to transitioning in this. And that is not related, again, to the type of the industry, but the location, because in some of the parts we don't have the connectivity necessary, for example, for some of the needs for this transition, or the funding is another problem, or the workforce is not prepared, so they don't have let's say the professionals necessary for this in that region. So we are working in kind of the system approach for this. And last year, as I said before, so pretty much we are looking at 3 different factors: infrastructure, human side, and environment. So last year, we launched the strategy for Internet of Things. If you think this is like a system, so we have this connection. So Internet of Things, this strategy, we had 4 different chambers to communicate, to join forces, so to bring different actors to each one of the chambers. So the first one was agriculture, so agribusiness 4.0. Second one was health 4.0, industry 4.0, and smart cities. And we defined those 4 different chambers by doing like a public call. So we got information and we got opinions from different sides of the society here in Brazil. And this year, we are launching 4 different centers for artificial intelligence, applied artificial intelligence, each one for each chamber. So one center for artificial intelligence applied to health 4.0, one for industry 4.0, another one for agribusiness 4.0, and smart cities. And this is also connected with the preparation for the 5G implementation that we are planning to start next year, as well as the connectivity of the country. You have a huge project connecting the northeast part of the country and especially the north side of the country. Those are the most, say, complicated regions in terms of connectivity. The idea of so focusing in industry 4.0, the idea of the chamber is to bring together, so different actors, the government, the federal level, local level, also the private sectors, and the academy, the science side, all the research centers. So everybody together thinking about solutions in 4 different areas. First one is the technology development and the innovations. So how can we help with this from the government side, from all those sides? Second part is the human capital. So how can we prepare our professionals, not only for the new jobs that they have ahead, they're talking about the young guys, but also for the ones that are already working in like old ways. We have to reposition those professionals. So we have all this program going on here in terms of preparation of the professional skills. The third part is the productive chain and the supply chain. So how can we improve this, and how can we, as our friend from the Lockheed Martin, so how can we keep the chain, the supply chain strong? So in this, we have several different programs to help, to fund, and especially in this situation right now, so with the pandemic, so how can we help those companies to keep the employees? How can they keep the business going on? Also, the fourth side is the regulation and infrastructure. And this side, we have several things going on. For example, how to have a special treatment for startups in Brazil. So this is in the Congress right now. So we work closely with the Ministry of Economy to bring together, for example, how to simplify taxation in Brazil, which is a huge problem. I don't know in other countries, but here it's very complicated. So we are simplifying this and reducing also the taxes. Also the labor laws, how to simplify this for the companies. There's so many different things going on at the same time. And this is a good thing about this government. We have the relationship between the ministries is very strong. So we found a very good, let's say, greenfield and a very good situation here to help the company. So we are working, as I said at the beginning, in a systematic way. So treating all this as a system.
Certainly a time to reassess. Of course, it seems that many manufacturers, of course, really are urgently seeking ways to transform and modernize and adapt in order to survive. So moving back over to Italy again, tell us maybe a bit more about the current landscape when it comes to AI and IT strategy, and how are SMEs, for example, adapting to new tech? Has it been quite a straightforward process?
Yes. As I told you, the situation of the company of the Italian companies are slightly different from the other states, from the other realities. We have a 92% of the company size are small, medium, and micro enterprise. So for us, we need for Italy is needed to set up a strategy for them. That's because 3 years ago, Italy set up the Industry 4.0, a national plan of incentives based on the 4th industrial revolution, supporting the digitalization process of small and medium enterprise, but as well as the large ones. And this government has also expanding the action not only for the automation and robotics, but even for the software and the cloud. That's because we have a problem of interoperability of data, and so we try to define a unique system where the data of the public administration must be interoperated by any companies or any citizen. Due to the pandemic COVID-19 crisis, Italy received over 200 billion by EU for help. And so this government decides that it's urgent and vital to boost Italy's technological and industrial capacity and invest in the digitalization of public administration. That's because we set up a strategy on a lot of topics about the digitalization. One topic is about the digitalization of the public administration, first of all, and the second, a strategy on AI, and the second, a strategy of 5G and blockchain. The strategy of AI has been driven a couple of months ago, and the plan is based on the three principles of the Italian strategy. The first one is, I think, the one of the most important, that it's a human-centric strategy in compliance with the European strategy. The second one is reliability, and the third one is sustainability. The priority, and I think that is quite important to know the priorities, the sector who the government will give you a sort of priority are manufacturing, agri-food, tourism, infrastructure, healthcare, smart city, and public administration. And they are going to improve also the public and the private partnership and the cooperation inter-institution in line with the EU strategy. So we have a couple of chapters just to stimulate the small and medium enterprise. So we created a fund of innovation, more or less 1 billion per year to help to create the venture capital and the small enterprise. And we created also a smart start fund. It's 90 million to support the early stage of a startup of Italy. And under certain circumstances, I think this is quite important, is even for the company not based in Italy. And just to let me to conclude, talking about the environment, so the regulatory standard. So we try to develop the sandboxes, so a sort of areas where the regulation is limited or favorable to testing new product and service for the companies. And we try to accelerate in the AI take-up through the digital innovation hubs to foster the uptake of AI in the economy, in particular by small and medium enterprise. Digital innovation hubs can help ensure that every company, small or large, high-tech or not, as well as the public sector, can grasp the digital opportunity of the new economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent to hear your strategy there. I actually wanted to move over to developing countries now, and I wanted to ask Dr. Stephen Walker his thoughts about what business resilience means in the context of developing countries, and also what sort of strategies they're also deploying to support their manufacturing sectors in order to cope with the global disruptions such as the recent pandemic.
Well, whether you're talking about developing countries or developed countries, however you want to say it, you already hit on it. I think resiliency is important. And so how you secure your digitization, digital transformation of your manufacturing sector is going to be important no matter what country you are. We live in a world that is fairly insecure, and lots of folks out there trying to steal IP and cause problems. So securing the digital transformation that all of us are trying to achieve is going to be very important. Standards, working together across the globe to enforce standards that sort of emphasize that security and transformation is also going to be important to all of us. As we look at again, no matter what country you're talking about or industry, culture is important to this digital transformation and having it really take hold within your company, within your country. We've found at Lockheed that if it's a top-down thing from corporate, it doesn't work very well. You've got to get out and talk to the frontline workers in the factories. They understand their jobs better than anybody. And so talking to them, bringing them into the conversation, helping them plan the next digital prototype that they have to actually work with is really important. And so I think that goes for countries as well. Getting down and talking to the people that are actually doing the work is going to be really important as we move forward.
Do you have a lot of this type of technology already implemented within your manufacturing plants anyway? Is it something that you've transitioned to already, so you're sort of ready for it already, or is it still quite a sort of people's
No, I mean, our industry is low volume, relative to other industries, right? We make a few very specialized products across, aerospace, mission systems, and missiles. And so very specialized products, but we don't make a lot compared to other industries. And so a lot of touch labor involved. And so we are very much still in transition from that sort of mindset to moving into a more digital transformation and using that world, technologies that have already been mentioned, AI-enabled decision-making, advanced communications, and using those technologies within our factories. We're making progress, but I would say, again, going back to culture, changing the culture, bringing the frontline workers into it. One of the things you can do from corporate that I think does make a difference is emphasize data, right? So we stood up a chief data analytics officer and an office to really ensure that across the company, everyone's seeing data is very important, and collecting that data and being able to use it to make decisions is very important. We set up a digital academy where any employee at Lockheed can go on and take courses online in AI, 5G, all the technology areas that are coming down the pike, which has also helped us along the way. And then a communication strategy is vital, and how you communicate what we're trying to do to our employees, and again, bring them into the picture is extremely important to changing the way we do business. It's a process. We're still in the process, very much in the process, but making good progress. I think the other thing there is it's important, not only is it, you can't drive this top down, it's got to be bottoms up, but it's really important to try things, right? So not have one big architecture that you're spending 10 years building and then trying to get it out to the workforce. You got to try some different technology prototypes, get people using it, and again, that'll help generate the bottoms up transformation that we need.
Of course, whenever there's a challenge, there's always an opportunity. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what the future holds, indeed. Anders Fredholm, it would be great to hear your take on developing countries as well, and maybe some of the strategies that they're deploying to support their manufacturing sectors. Also, have you seen a rise in inquiries maybe from manufacturing companies off the back of the pandemic, wishing to sort of automate their processes a little bit more as well?
Yes. I'm picking up a number of keywords from the other participants here, right? So I would say that decades of continuous improvement and automation in manufacturing has, to some extent, streamlined production and operations and cut costs, etc. This has sometimes resulted in a hardwired process, right? Sometimes also siloed data, and also potentially disengaged employees, right? So change is a bit difficult and sometimes too difficult, right? But I think today we need more flexibility than ever, right? Because we need technology that unleash the innovation to the points given already earlier, right? Rather than restricting the agility. And one key point that will be the base for this is the data, as was also said here earlier, right? The important point is how you govern that data, because that dictates the level of flexibility and resiliency that can be achieved in the future, right? So information architecture is a foundation for this, for a company or for a larger organization to make data accessible, all the way from a plant or edge computer on a machine, etc., all the way into sales and service. And we need to utilize new technologies, like also was said earlier, the 5G is coming heavily. That's a huge opportunity, of course, for the developing countries, right? And on this data architecture, there is then a need for AI or artificial intelligence, machine learning solutions that can articulate and pull out the alarms for inconsistencies and also suggest remedies to problems or changes in demand, for example, supply chain disruptions or equipment that are down, etc. Right? So also we need, worker safety solutions is, as I said earlier, I think one of the most key sought after solutions at this very moment. And I think that goes a lot, of course, also into developing countries, right? So another thing that was mentioned was blockchain, which is a huge enabler for a trusted view of shared data across an ecosystem. And we see that technology from IBM side coming heavily today, right? And I think in a later session, you will have also responsible sourcing represented, right? So responsible sourcing business networks. So that is a key technology, right? And finally, I would like to say the new ways of working, like Steve Walker said, right? How people actually work rather than being dictated by process-based transactions. So at IBM, we call this kind of intelligent workflows, right? That is enabled then by artificial intelligence and machine learning. So I think it's about openness in this plant to unlock this data and make it visible and accessible with a new technology, right? I think that's the key word. So then back to the point of developing countries, I don't see a problem that this can be applied in developing countries. I think on the opposite, I would say that this makes an opportunity to catch back maybe some lost ground, if that is the case, right? Because the technology can be very easily deployed into a new workforce, etc. It is, of course, a matter of change management, but it gives an opportunity, I think, for the developing countries to do it, right? So, sorry, a bit long answer, but I think I picked up on the points that was made earlier, and it fitted very well, I think, into the points I made, right? Thanks.
So, Mr. TV Narendran, tell us about maybe some of the companies that you've witnessed that are, in fact, leading when it comes to digital transformation and why. And also, are there any sort of lessons that can be learned off the back of this as well?
To me, one of the industries which is in the middle of all this is the auto industry. The auto industry certainly is getting disrupted in multiple ways, not just in the way they produce cars, but in the kind of cars that they produce, also in the way the cars are used. And auto industry, at least within manufacturing, has always been one of the leaders in the use of technology, robotics, automation, etc. over the years. And the second group is the one I belong to, which is process industry. Again, process industry generates a wealth of information. So there's a huge opportunity to capture the data that we generate and use it well. Oftentimes in process industries, you only capture a fraction of the data that you generate, and you only use a fraction of the data that you capture. So there's a huge opportunity there as well to drive cost efficiencies to a very different level. So these are two industries who I think are leading the way. Some of them already have a lot of technology embedded in the processes. Some of them are rethinking their processes, keeping technology at the center of it.
So yes, Mr. TV Narendran, what does business resilience mean in the context of developing countries, in your opinion? And tell us about some of the strategies as well that they're rolling out in order to support the manufacturing sector as well when it comes to developing countries.
So business resilience has, taken a very different meaning in this interconnected world, where what happens in one part of the world impacts someone sitting in the other part of the world. So obviously, business resilience to me means the ability to withstand cyclicality. If you're in a cyclical industry, the ability to be globally competitive and to operate in different macroeconomic conditions, and your ability to anticipate and prepare for risks that are playing out in different parts of the world, which can come and hit you sooner than you think. And I think we've seen the velocity of the risk hitting us in the case of the pandemic. So business resilience is just not that much more complicated and that much more difficult to build. In developing countries, the challenge, of course, is that many companies probably don't have the resources, can't really dip deep inside to get the resources that they need to deal with these kind of challenges. So governments need to step in. In developing countries, there are developing countries who are dependent on the global markets, export markets. That makes it tougher for them. Developing country like India, you have a large domestic market, so you can pivot from export markets to domestic markets if required, and if you have the potential for that. So governments need to step in, help the MSMEs, and I think in India, we've seen the government step in on the supply side, help the liquidity in the system, moratorium so that loan repayments can be deferred. On the demand side, the government has announced a lot of investments in infrastructure, which acts as a multiplier from a macroeconomic point of view. So governments need to play a very important role in helping industry build resilience in these challenging times in developing countries.
I mean, there has, of course, been a talk of a second wave as well. So with global disruptions, what do you think needs to be done immediately in order to sort of save the sector, I suppose?
I think governments certainly need to play a very active role because this kind of challenge very few of us have faced in our lifetime, and I think it's important for governments to step in. It's important for industry to strap up. So industry and governments need to work very, very closely together. And the financial sector plays a very important role in this because they have money lent to the industries. The industries are struggling to pay back the loans. So I think the financial sector, the government, the industry need to work together, find solutions, build resilience as we discussed, and really prepare for the next 2 to 3 years because it's going to be a while before we come back to the way we were before the pandemic.
Fantastic insights there. Thank you very much. Sadly, we have run out of time. But just before we go, I'd really love it if we could all sort of wrap up just a couple of sentences from each of you, just your final thoughts and some of the key takeaways from our discussion. So the final question is 4IR the answer to a more resilient manufacturing sector? Your Excellency, Marcus Pontes, what are your takeaway thoughts from our discussion?
Well, thank you very much. When we think about the resilience of the companies, we noticed during this pandemic situation now the importance of the partnership between the government and when I say the government, it's not just the federal level government, but also the state and municipalities level, and also other organizations that can work together in the private sector, like banks or the academy and the research centers that we have in the private and the public sector, to work together to find solutions and innovations. I believe the key word here is innovation. Of course, it's a difficult situation that we face right now, but in the midst of this difficult situation is when we find the best opportunities for innovations as well. So we are trying to apply to invest in small companies and startups and the ideas from the different sectors, and you can't imagine how many good ideas we have in this time here. We just launched this artificial intelligence centers editor and this call, and we have the response from different parts of the country, and with a lot of very good ideas that we are taking advantage of this, implementing in here. And so with this, we are helping hospitals, for example, to solve using artificial intelligence to monitor the patients and saving a lot of lives here. We didn't think about this before, and that was brought to us during the pandemic. Also analyzing different types of drugs to reposition drugs using artificial intelligence. And we are almost scientifically certifying medication for COVID-19 because of the use of artificial intelligence and other things. So I think the innovation is the key to the resilience. And of course, it has to be accompanied by the government support in terms of funding, in terms of the environment for the business, simplifying all the systems. And we are getting good results. And do not forget the human side. We have to prepare professionals, not only for this time, but for the future as well. So we work a lot with the kids, the young, that they are going to be our future.
Well, thank you very much. And as you said, chaos and uncertainty always breeds innovation. And as you said, innovation is a very important one there. And the Honourable Mattia Fantinati, your 2-minute wrap up from our discussion, please.
Oh, well, I would like to link with the Minister of Brazil, Marco Pontes said, and I would like to describe what Italy is doing now. I am representing Italy and the high-level panel of digital cooperation at the UN, and it's a multi-stakeholder platform in a context of sustainable development on the new technology. And we are trying to, about artificial intelligence, to create a repository of knowledge and to avoid the duplicates that there are in a lot of states about artificial intelligence. And we try to gather together all the states to increase our connectivity. So I think that it's really important to create this kind of platforms to promote and facilitate a global coordination and cooperation between the numerous entities, creating a global multi-stakeholder network. I think that's really important because our aim is to help our company. I think that there is one trade-off between what a government or a state can do and with their regulation, with the law, and in where is which kind of regulation should be useful for the companies, for the industrial sector. I think that to tackle the issue, you have to consider two aspects. I think that the government must support all the companies' effort, removing burdens for economic activities, and it means a strategy on the market to foster the innovation. And to the other side, the government set standards of transparency coding. It is focusing on the concept human-centric vision, that it means transparency in a concept of sustainable development. And this is the politics in this case plays a fundamental role, because the algorithm of selection of AI, of machine learning and so on entails a political decision. So a multi-cooperation, private partnership with private sector and public administration, I think is really, really important. Let me just conclude, because I know that most of your country belong to the Internet Governance Forum, where a multi-stakeholder platform where we can share our knowledge, and we're talking about the right of Internet. Italy really recognize the importance of protecting and defending human rights, because I think that the COVID-19 crisis has shown that the internet is an essential resource for our societies and economics. No country could have survived the lockdown without it. So the need to ensure access for all and the protection of human rights has become even more urgent. I think that this is the main aspect, so the proper right to put the citizen at the center of the place when we talk about artificial intelligence, and help our companies in the three pillars which every strategy should be funded in a sort of a government strategy to help the market. Thank you very much.
Very interesting key takeaways there. Thank you so much. Dr. Stephen Walker, what are some of the key highlights you'd like our audience to go away with from our discussion?
Well, Mattia stole my thunder. I was going to say, last October, the internet turned 50 years old, and without the internet, I'm not sure what we would have done as a world. Certainly in my own country during this pandemic, it has really kept us tied together. As you know, one innovation that's come out of this is the Zoom happy hour. So you know, it's an interesting thing, and I attribute that to the third industrial revolution. So I'm interested to see what comes out of the fourth industrial revolution, and pretty positive that we're going to get even more innovation as we look to the future. Thanks.
Very uncertain time, but also very exciting time as well. Looking forward. Mr. Anders Fredholm, your key takeaways, please.
Yeah, I would like to say one more thing as a word of caution in this. We've spoken about a number of technologies and ways to build a strategy, etc. I think that during this COVID-19 period, there has been a tremendous amount of security attacks on our clients, I mean, in manufacturing industries, right? And those are targeting the entire plant operations, entire supply chains, etc. So I just would like to say that that is one foundational pillar, I would say, for building this technology going forward, and how systems, solutions, and also employees are set up to build a new future and the new normal, right? Other than that, I think the key takeaways and points and recommendations, I mean, it's about engaging, enable, and safeguard the workforce, right? That's already said, but I think I want to stress that again, being really human-centric. I think we are on a track, all of us, right, and our clients, on utilizing new technologies in cloud and AI to drive agility, flexibility, accessibility, efficiency, and also, I think I said it before, collaboration over the ecosystems, right? So to Steve Walker's point about the internet, right? I think without that, what would have been today, right? I think, I don't know, nobody knows really, right? So the ecosystems of partners and platforms, I think is crucial for us in the future to build the resilience stronger, and to be able to give us more options, and keep also track of the bad guys, if I say so, right? And the difficulties and the pitfalls that's in the system. So I think that's all from me. Okay, thank you.
And Mr. T.V. Narendran, tell us about some of your key takeaways that you think our audience should go away with.
Well, I think in an interconnected world, be prepared for risk to play out more quickly than you thought. Build resilience. We talked about resilience. I think it's very, very important to build resilience. Digital technologies are here to stay. I think all of us were in that journey. We are now accelerating in that journey. So it calls for investments. It calls for building capabilities. I don't think anyone can escape that. Manufacturing cannot sit back and think that they are insulated from what's happening in the digital world. So build resilience, make yourself future ready, and there's a lot to do for that.
Well, a huge thank you once again for taking the time out of your very busy schedules. An absolute pleasure speaking with you all, and for those in-depth industry insights on 4IR for a more resilient manufacturing sector. If any of our viewers would like to continue the conversation, please do head over to our social media, where you can find us under @GMI Summit. And please do stay with us for the next session. Thank you very much.